Hi, welcome to DramaMeans. We're talking about the 2023 Japanese live-action remake of Yu Hakusho. Today, Drama means live-action anime, Drama means Band of Misfits, and Drama means becoming a hero despite every effort to do the exact opposite.
Now, here's a little summary to start out with. After dying a tragic but heroic death, a young delinquent is offered the chance to become a spirit detective, where he must defend humanity from the dangerous yokai that have risen from the underworld. His first case? Well, save all life as we know it.
So I do have to say that we did not watch the anime version of this.
I would love to be able to say that I'm cultured enough to go back and watch the anime, but that old anime style from back in the day, it's hard for me to watch.
It is, and it's the same with One Piece. Like, I've tried to go back and watch One Piece, but it's just like that old anime. I think the available versions are like in 4:3 format, and
Or they stretch it to be like widescreen and then everyone looks weird.
Yeah. So I haven't gone back to watch One Piece. I haven't gone back to watch Yu Hakusho. Um I don't know. I don't know if I will. Like, I actually tried to rewatch Inuyasha again after all these years, and I actually had like the old time DVDs of Inuyasha, and I kind of can't go back and watch it.
So I would say our review of this is obviously from people who are not entrenched in this, what would you call, source material. So we're not hardcore nerds in the source material. So we're reviewing it from a much different kind of new to the subject matter point of view, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It just makes you experience it a lot differently because you don't know, or at least I didn't know, where this was going. I really didn't know anything about the story or what it was about or where the story was going or who these characters were and the way they're introduced. So any fan service is kind of lost on both of us. So we can only really look at it as, what was this as a piece of entertainment in and of itself?
Yes. And with that said, I actually really enjoyed it since I don't know the source material. So just watching it from, story wise to the action to the CG to like costuming, it all looks fantastic. Um, I really enjoyed the combination of its action from I always had such a hard time with like CG fighting and like a lot of the actors stand there and then just all the CG happening around it without the actors actually doing anything like that always bothers me, but I think this is a good balance and combination of both where the actors are fighting and they're doing the stunts and the action, but then it's helped with CG.
Yeah, I really felt like they embraced the wire work and they embraced the stunt work and the action choreography, but then helped it become an anime or a live action anime with the CG. So you got these fantastical action sequences you couldn't just do with actors doing their thing. And it really felt like the two things really held hands in this. It wasn't that one necessarily took it over. There are some sequences where you're like, that's a little heavy-handed CG wise or whatever. But I think for the most part, they did a really good job of making sure that both of those things worked together, not one overshadowing the other.
Yeah, I agree. I just liked that the CG was to enhance the fighting and the martial arts and like the action, and it's not just taking over.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing with CG is a lot of times directors will look at it and go, oh, because of CG, we can put a camera somewhere we'd never be able to put the camera. Or we can slow-mo this shot down and see every little piece of this thing. And they really love to show details with CG. And I always think it's more effective to basically go, okay, what is the story we're trying to tell? well, we're telling the story of yokai and spirits and demons and supernatural. And so how do we make all these characters superhuman? And that's what the CG came to do. It didn't replace the humans, it made them superhuman. So we could see things that weren't possible to see with just, the wire work or the fight choreography. So I can't confirm this next thing, but I was really looking to see who the action choreographer was for this, because I thought in basically every action sequence, the camera is put in the exact place it should be put. The camera movement enhances the choreography. It just all works so well. And so many times when I'm watching these, I'm like, oh, the camera's too close. Or, oh, why are you cutting so much? And it felt like this was paced so well. And so I looked on the internet, I looked high and low. I could not find concrete, you know, what do you call it, credits that say, hey, this is who the action choreographer is. Probably if I could read Japanese, there's probably a website that would tell me this, but I cannot. But the rumors on Reddit were that the action choreographer of this was also the action choreographer of Rurouni Kenshin and the Twilight of Warriors Walled In, which we did a review on a couple weeks ago.
Last week.
Was it last week?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a long week. Who is phenomenally talented, who's trained with the best of the best in Hong Kong and Japan and everywhere. So it wouldn't surprise me that this style would be his, because it's that good.
You definitely can see it. It feels like his style. We have no real concrete evidence that it is him, but just the way he, like, the way they crawl up the walls and walk,
scrape the ground.
Yeah, and, it's just, that's his style. We see it again and again. And so if it's not him, I feel like it's very good.
Well, it's someone who's probably studied this style. Like, it definitely, they all steal from each other. All these choreographers and action directors, they're nerds when it comes to this kind of thing. And so they look at what other people do. I worked with a choreographer in Japan who, he did a movie that's just wall-to-wall action. He was the director of. And then I see stuff from his movie that are in other things, because all these guys know each other. They go, oh, like that guy did this, and now I can do this, and I can take it and enhance it. So if it wasn't him, it's someone that understands action in a very similar way, and kind of mind-blowing a lot of the time. It's really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot.
What I really appreciate is that it's just that, brawl style fighting.
Mm-hmm.
That, everyone gets hurt and, they're, battered and bruised, but then they come out on top. That just feels like it has so much, more heart, rather than, the most powerful, can't be beaten guy that,
Oh, I like it when my heroes get a bloody nose, get punched in the face a little bit. And apparently from reading different reviews, the original anime, I guess, he really gets his ass kicked. Yusuke does. Okay. And so it's kind of part of his character is, he's that Deku, that character that very kind of I will be beat to the ground, but if there's still an ounce left in me, I will still be fighting. There's no quit. And I think that's what makes those characters so relatable, is that even when the odds are stacked way against them, there's no quit. If I have one cell left in my body with strength in it, I'm going to use it to fight. So I think that was part of the original source material, and apparently, I really enjoyed it, and a lot of people online were like, they got that super right.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because in the past things that I've ever seen Kitamura in, the actor that plays Yusuke, he's always done rom-coms, like softer characters, whereas this is my first time seeing him in such an action-packed drama. And I really want to know who decided to cast him, mm-hmm. and who has that great insight to cast him.
Yeah, casting against type like that and having it work so well.
Yeah, he's so good in it.
He's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed him from his look. He's not he played that kind of shitbag at the beginning. I don't care about anybody. And he's just got this interesting look, but this intensity. And you're right. Who watches a rom-com and goes, hey, I think this guy can do that.
Yeah. So that was really, it's like a breath of fresh air.
When you can really cast against type, it is so almost magic because you're just not expecting it. You think about like Bryan Cranston, even like he was in Malcolm in the Middle, the dad from Malcolm in the Middle, and then suddenly Breaking Bad, which you wouldn't look at those two things side by side and go, hey, we should have this guy play a meth dealer, or meth maker. But it works so well because you lose them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times with big stars, we watch big action movies and big action stars. It's like, here comes the action star in their action role. They never disappear into the role. In where this case, I think he had the chance to disappear into the role. And I really, really enjoyed him. I was like, this guy's great.
Yeah, I agree. My gripe is that we didn't get to see Machida that much in this drama.
He's definitely in like one set for the most part. Like he's like, listen, I'll work for 6 days. I want to stay in the same set, and this is how much money you're going to pay me.
Yeah, but like I'm not gonna lie, I decided to watch this, or I agreed to watch this because I wanted to see more Machida, and yeah, he was barely in it.
Yeah, he's not in it a lot. He's definitely one of those. We've watched a couple of movies recently where, you take a big star and you strategically, put them in just one or two sets so that like they don't have to work that much. You can pay them a nice hefty sum so you can put their name on the poster and you can put their face in your trailer. But as, he was on screen a bit. He wasn't like a bit part and it wasn't a cameo. It was more than a cameo. But he for sure, if you're tuning in for him, he don't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was also reading a little bit about how, some of the CG, if you go on to IMDb and you look at the credits, there's about 9 million VFX artists credited for this movie. But I was looking a little deeper into that, and a lot of the stuff they did, they kind of pioneered some techniques to make some of these superhumans or these yokai who they were. I mean, they were doing shrinking with one of the characters, and they were doing hulking up with Toguro, and so it was like they were kind of figuring out their own ways to do this and pioneering their own techniques, so they could say, "Hey, not only are we shooting with this action, and the story is that." James Cameron gets a lot of credit for doing that stuff with Avatar. It's like, well, he can't even make Avatar because he has to invent the technology first. And that was kind of going on a little bit with this movie too, which I think is why some of it actually looked so much better than normal. They weren't borrowing video game technology and throwing it in a movie.
Yeah, it's just come so long. I remember the days when they did like yokai movies like Gegege no Kitaro, and it was just like it looked bad. The makeup was bad. All the yokai looked really like, low budget and just bad. And then it's just so nice to see like, oh, we can now see like CG working in its like such a better way. Makeup is fantastic. It's just we've come a long way since those days.
And I think not only the CG, but also this anime style storytelling. I think a lot of times people miss when they try to do the live action adaptation, they miss the point. They miss why we love anime. And that all gets kind of washed away. And we're left with kind of an action bastardization of the thing we loved. And so I think you're right, it kind of set a different bar for not only like CG and being, really interesting to look at, and it didn't take you out of the story. I remember watching, what was that movie? Brotherhood of the Wolf was a French film.
Oh, yeah.
Where the CG of this wolf just ruined the whole movie. Like, I was like, the movie's gritty, and it's kind of like dark, and it had some cool action in it, and then the CG wolf shows up, and you're just like, ugh. Ugh.
I feel like there's been a lot of movies with like that, like where like monsters. Originally, it's like scary with like monsters, and then they finally show the monster, and you're like, oh, that's not scary at all, and it just ruins the whole movie.
Yeah, and I think historically that had always been done with a lot more animatronics. When you talk about like Jaws and Jurassic Park, where you actually show the shark and it's scary as shit, or the dinosaurs in the original Jurassic Park were like part CG and part animatronic, like they were working them together, And they knew better than to step outside and make it look cheesy, because the whole movie's screwed if your dinosaurs look like shit.
Yeah.
Whereas this, the CG is finally to a point where you can take these fantastical anime ideas and make them feel like they belong in the world with real human actors, which that's a lot tougher to do than it sounds like. It sounds like, oh yeah, we can meld these two worlds, but it's done badly so often. But I think in addition to that, what I was kind of going towards was this anime style of storytelling. The tropes of anime are a little different than the tropes of traditional live action film. And I think a lot of times when we translate something to live action, we lose the thing that made us love anime. So this idea of, you know, where your two hero and villain are fighting each other, and you think they're going as hard as they can, and then the villain is like, "I've only been using my 50%. Now it's time to show you my all." And then the hero's like, "Wait a minute, I've only been showing you my 50%. Now it's time for me to show you my all." And it's this back and forth of one-upping each other until they're going past their limits. They're going past where they ever thought they could go. And that kind of the idea of the bad guy going, "Oh, you're the first person that's ever taken a punch of mine. You're the first foe I've ever had to take seriously enough to use my full power." It's such an anime idea, and the fact that they were able to keep that alive on so many fronts, especially in the final sequence of the entire thing,
Yeah.
was so satisfying to watch as an anime nerd.
So anime. Like, it's so like that anime style, you know, of storytelling. And that's why it's so satisfying, because you're like, okay, he's going to lose even though he's put all his effort in, and he's just completely exhausted himself, only to realize like he planned it from the beginning, but he needed to, you know,
set it all up to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun in this, where you really aren't sure when the final blow is going to be delivered, because they have this way in anime to always push to the next level. And so, and it's always like a comparison of strength, right? So if your opponent is a certain amount of strong, then you go over the top. It's like, I'm going to win because I've gone over the top. Well, then your opponent goes over the top. And then you change the game with a special ability. And then they change the game with a special ability. And you never quite know when each character is going to reach that point where they've got nothing left. So there were a lot of times during that fight where like, oh, he's going to die. Like, he's the one. Maybe he'll end up taking out the bad guy, but this character is going to die. There's no way he figures out how to win. Oh, wait, he figured out how to win. And I think that's so hard to do. And it just shows, like, when fights are done right, the story throughout is so cohesive, and a story all by itself. You can look at that fight and go, oh man, there were beginning, middle, ends, there were emotional journeys, there were character journeys, there were arcs, and that was just a fight.
And that's the thing, like, usually we expect to see that with your main lead, but they do it so well with like all the side characters too.
Yeah, everyone got hero moments and ebbs and flows, especially in the final sequence of the entire season. So they really did take care of all their characters and make sure that there's a reason you're cheering for all of them by the end.
Yeah. And I love, you know, my most loved thing.
What is that, pray tell?
Rivals to friends. I love, love, love that. And it's just so great to see it from like, you know, Yusuke and Kazuma, where they're like rivals in the beginning, and then like, you know, Kazuma just like realizing that he wants to be stronger than Yusuke, but then also like following him around and like doing the right thing and learning, you know, from Yusuke to like, you know, save his friends or be strong enough to be able to protect his friends and people around him. It's just, I love that. And then it goes Yusuke to Kurama, like they were kind of against each other, but then like for whatever Yusuke like trusted Kurama to like, you know, use that mirror thing, and then just give it back to him.
Right.
Like that. And then they're friends, or allies, whatever you want to call them. And then to like Yusuke and Hiei, like they're the most unlikely allies, but then they do become allies because they have the same goal. And it's just, I love this stuff.
Well, then you also even have, and I don't think they played it enough, but there is so much potential in Kazuma and Hiei to be like the one hates yokai and the other hates humans. And by the end, they have this kind of begrudging respect for each other. And they don't play it very on the nose in this, but it is an extra wrinkle that I kind of, at the very end, I was like, oh, right, there's a philosophy shift of both of them, because Kazuma saw that yokai tear through all of his buddies and he wasn't strong enough to fight it. And, he hates yokai as much as he hates humans and hates people.
Yeah.
But they have to kind of at the end look at each other and go, all right, this one's okay. And
Yeah.
maybe it's opening the door to a friendship later on down the line. I also love how it's Kazuma that unlocks Yusuke's kind of ability to learn when they go and train together. It's watching his kind of rival not give up in the impossible task that makes him go, oh, wait, that guy has pushed himself. I need to be pushing myself.
Yeah.
Which that was like a really great moment, I thought, for me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's why we love anime so much, and that style of storytelling, and it has so much heart, and it has like personal growth, and that's like what we all strive to like watch in a story, or like read in a story, however you consume your story. But it's so satisfying. It's like the characters are so like relatable and loved.
Well, I like that the lessons can be learned from anywhere, and most of the time they come from an unexpected place. So Yusuke is going to train thinking that the mentor is going to give him all the answers. And if we've ever watched anything about mentor, underling relationships, everything from the old kung fu movies to the Matrix to like, Star Wars, like your teacher doesn't just spell it out for you. Yoda didn't just say, this is what you got to do. The student has to find their own path a little bit. And weirdly, it's this rival that helps him, be shown the path. And then he can go, oh, okay, I can break through my own bullshit if this guy can. So I like that these revelations can come from, just kind of like 90 degrees off of where you expect them. They're credible, but not predictable.
Yeah.
And I kind of found myself just kind of like watching this and like smiling, being like, they're just doing so much right.
I agree. And I love that each of the characters who is going on this journey to supposedly save the world, right? But their goal was never like, oh, we have to save the world. Like each person had a specific goal, and you could say it's like more of a selfish goal, because it's just they don't really care about the world. They just care about the one person that they care about. So Yusuke just wants to save Keiko.
Mm-hmm. It's a personal goal. It's so much more relatable when it's that way, right?
Yeah. And then Kurama is helping his mother. Hiei is finding his sister. Kazuma just wants to be strong enough to protect his friends. That's their goal. It just so happens that those goals lead them to saving the freaking world.
Yeah, I always love the reluctant hero so much more than a hero that just sets out to like, you know what? The world is on my shoulders and I must protect it. Like that feels so cheeseball to me, because I just don't buy it. That's not how we operate.
Yeah.
All of us are kind of selfish. We all have what we hold the most dear. And like sacrificing myself to save the world doesn't sound all that appealing. Sacrificing myself to save someone I care deeply about, well, I can resonate with that now.
Yeah, kind of like in Spy Realm, where like Huang Junjie's like character was like, I don't care, like I'm not gonna go and like save people in the world that I don't know. I care more about you, even though you're like AI. I'm not going to go like beat this game so you could disappear and save everyone, like all the gamers in this world, because what I care about is you being next to me. Like, it's that same sentiment. Like, yes, it feels a little selfish, but also, like, again, there are people just that matter more to you.
It's just a hard truth in life, y'all. Like, your family and friends care more about you than strangers. Duh. Like, it shouldn't be a hard thing to understand, and I don't think it is, because most people, when you watch a movie, you understand a character's motivation of, if saving the world means sacrificing my sister, I am not willing to save the world. Unless it is some kind of noble sacrifice, like it works its way into the story.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm just going to sacrifice everything I love in order to kind of just save the world. Again, that's just not relatable. It's not how we all think and act and behave in our normal everyday lives.
Yeah. Quite frankly, this type of story and these types of characters are more appealing to me than, say, like the Avengers, right? Which for me, like,
But even the Avengers, I mean, it's watered down, but the Avengers all have personal reasons for doing what they're doing. Like, Tony Stark has very personal reasons at the end of Avengers Endgame to do what he's doing, because he kind of has the life he wants, and he doesn't want to save the world anymore. He's like, hey, I know the world sucks, but I've got a wife and a kid that I can't leave, the world a worse place for. Like, what happened happened. Just forget about it. So his priority is not necessarily saving the world, even though a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily come through for every character. It feels like a lot of times characters just want to be heroes.
yeah.
And I love in this one, no one wants to be a hero.
Yeah.
And I love that about the main character. I love that about Yusuke. He basically is brought up. It's like, all right, so we're going to give you this opportunity to not die. You're going to go back to the earth. You're going to be a spirit detective. You're going to save the world. And he's like, nah, I'm good. We're like, well, wait, what? No one says no. What are you doing? He's like, nah, I that sounds like a pain in the ass. I mean, like, I love that character. He doesn't need it until he needs it. Now, there were a few things that we didn't like as much. I mean, I think one of the biggest, I wouldn't call it the biggest problem, but I really didn't like the opening of the entire thing, which we talk a lot about openings and endings, how important it is to open a show well. That first episode has to be a humdinger, and how important it is to wrap up a series or a season well. And it wasn't enough for me to turn it off, but it did kind of take all the impact away from Yusuke's death.
The reveal
of his death. And
it's
I get
no
it.
longer a reveal because...
Yeah, and I guess people who, knew the manga or knew the anime, like, they already knew he was going to die. We probably know from the previews. But I still want that moment that allows me to experience it without kind of spoiling it. And so the first 10 minutes, what's going to happen, because they start, and I think this is the worst, like, convention in all of cinema, is starting a thing and then going 4 hours earlier. It's like, oh, well, you started your show too fucking late.
I don't understand flash forwards. I know what they're trying to do. They want to pull us in as fast as possible because we'll know what happens, and then we have to go back, and then we have to witness the journey. But we've known how linear story is told. We can follow a story with linear storytelling. Like, we don't need that flash forward. We don't need to see a little tidbit of some outcome and then be pulled in, because then you ruin the reveal of things. And I'm gonna, like, they did this in a reality dating show in The Boyfriend, where, like, they're interviewing, or like the introduction of each contestant, and then it cuts to like them crying, like, and it's like flash forward, like, oh, they're crying, or they're saying stuff, and there's like an argument or whatever, right? But literally it ruins the whole thing, because when those moments happen, we no longer care because
Right.
we've seen it before.
Because you've seen the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, again, like, why is this like a new thing where like everything, even like reality TV shows are putting these flash forwards in. Like,
well,
who cares?
This was already happening before kind of the what we would call like the ultra digital age. Like this was happening because if you wrote a script, you'd always get the note like what happens on your first page because agents and managers and studio executives like can't be bothered to read past the first page unless you like punch them in the face. And it was drilled into writers for so long that your first page just has to be like everything. Because, you know, the brain dead idiot who's reading this can't be bothered to read past the first page unless it literally grabs them by the nutsack. Now, it's made so much worse now because of the way we consume media through, you know, if you were to go to a movie theater to watch this, you would have seen a trailer, you would have or heard about this, you would have sat down in a movie theater. They have you. You've spent your money, you're sitting in the seat. They don't need to do a flash forward because they've got you. You're not going to get up if the first 4 minutes of the movie suck. You're going to like stick it out for a little bit because you've paid your money and you're sitting in your seat. But when you're thumbing through Netflix or flipping through TikTok, if things aren't interesting the second you turn it on, you flip to the next one. If you watch a TikTok and the first literally 2 seconds don't grab you, you flip to the next thing. So it's forcing storytellers to have to basically put the brightest, shiniest thing immediately. And something like on Netflix where you can turn it on and then if you watch 3 minutes of it and go, meh, I'm bored, you can flip to something new. A new thumbnail will pop up for you. So I think that's where it comes from, but it drives me bonkers because I do think there's an ability to hook an audience and then still tell your story in a linear fashion that's interesting. Like start your story in the correct place so that your first 5 minutes can be interesting. But you don't suck the drama and the tension and the surprise out of everything. And so I'm just sitting there going, yeah, I've been waiting for this truck to hit him. Like there was no tension in that whole, like I knew exactly what was going to happen. He meets the little kid with the ball and we see the guy driving the truck and we know he's going to get hit by the truck and we're just waiting for it to happen. There's a way to make that surprising and shocking and not blow the tension for us. And then I can get off my soapbox. It seems like a small thing, but it also is a big thing, but it's also like wasn't enough to ruin it. So it's in this weird category where I was like, ugh, I wish that was done better.
Yeah.
I didn't turn it off, but I wish that was done better.
I think my main thing that lost me was Toguro's backstory and like going so deep into like his, you know, why he joined, like why he became the yokai is so like blah. I don't care.
It's also very expected. Like it doesn't. We don't learn anything all that shocking.
Yeah, but also like there's this whole thing where like bad guys have to have like their reason for being a bad guy, and then we all have to empathize with the bad guy. Like I don't care. I don't want to empathize with the bad guy. Like I just want to see the bad guy get his ass kicked and be beaten. Like I don't care why he became the bad guy. I don't care how like, you know, wronged he was in his normal, like his before bad guy life. Like I don't care. I really don't.
And that is a huge part of a lot of anime is really digging into the villains. It is my least favorite part of anime. Like sometimes the villains are interesting, but for the most part, I don't want to spend all that much time with them. Like I want to understand why they're evil. I don't like necessarily bad guys who are just evil for evil's sake. I kind of want to understand that they're like, oh yeah, they've got a reason. But I don't necessarily want to attach emotion to that reason. Like, I don't really want to find empathy for them.
Yeah, I don't want to like feel bad for the bad guy. Like when we watch like Demon Slayer and they spend like episode upon episode on like why, you know, the bad guy is the bad guy. Like I'm like I really don't care. Like I don't want to cry for them. I don't want to feel for them. I guess you can show us a little like they were very wronged in their, you know, life before they died, but like
I do think there's this underlying thing with Demon Slayer and then with like yokai style stories where like Demon Slayer is that demons aren't necessarily evil. It's demons were people who were wronged, who were, people become monsters, not just to become monsters, but because they're kind of forced to become monsters. And then society points at them and goes, monster! And so there's this kind of societal metaphor they're kind of doing here, but they don't really dig like deep, like they dig too deep into a story, but they don't dig deep enough into the metaphor. That is, if you're treated like a monster, you start becoming a monster. And that's very prevalent in a lot of animes, and Demon Slayer is one of them. Like, that's the whole thing of Demon Slayer is when you treat people like garbage, they turn into monsters, and then you reap what you sow, humans.
Yeah.
And this is, I think they're going for that a little bit here, but I agree, especially for how short the series is, using that much real estate in an anime. If you have 25 episodes, go for it, knock your socks off. But I feel like in a short 5-episode season, it just took up too much of the percentage of the season to kind of go, hey, feel bad for the bad guy. And it didn't really work. I didn't really feel bad for him.
No.
Like the walk off at the end when he's walking down to the bridge into hell, and I'm like, I don't need to see this.
That scene was so unnecessary where like he meets Yusuke and
Kazuma's, the teacher.
Yeah.
Genkai, I think her name is.
I don't remember.
Yeah, the old lady.
Yeah.
That was like what basically his love interest that got old because she refused to become a yokai.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that scene was completely unnecessary.
I would have cut that shit right out. Yeah, and I also felt like this weird bet that they had, the Koenma and Sakyo's like random bet that was like, really? Like that's what you're basing everything off of? It's so weird.
Well, I thought the bad guy plan, for the most part, was a little nonsensical.
Yeah.
Is that, like, he's building a bridge from the human world to the underworld. He's going to reconnect the human world to the underworld. But what does he really need to do that? Money. I'm like, okay, if you say so. Like, it was so weird, all these, like, guys that are, like, betting on the yokai fights. And, like, I'm like, this is what? Like, it felt so silly. It felt like such a silly idea that like this guy wants to end the world, but he's like short on cash.
Even though he's like super rich anyway.
Also, couldn't you just hire your fucking Incredible Hulk you have on retainer just to rob some banks? Like, you literally have the Incredible Hulk as one of your henchmen. You're telling me you can't get your hands on some cash? You have to, like, trick rich idiots to wager on fights? And then, like, yeah, all right, whoever wins this fight, I'll agree to not do evil stuff anymore. And I'll keep my word, by the way, which, very noble of him to keep his word.
It's so weird. It's out of character. It just felt like, oh, we needed some way to end it, and they're like, oh, let's just throw this in. Like, none of this stuff matters, because, like, it's the Yusuke's story, and, like, the fight and the action is the important thing. This, and how to end it, we're just gonna do it this way, because it's like, no one cares. We just need an ending. It just didn't feel like they put enough effort into it, and I don't know if it's, like, based off of the anime or manga or whatever, but, like, they needed to figure something better, because that was so, like...
I mean, as a storyteller, I also don't want to see our heroes have to, like, go into the lab and, like, break the portal machine. Like, I don't really care about that, and, like, I don't want that to be a doing our guys have to do, but there should have been some way to get out from underneath the bad guy plan that was a little more, I don't even know how to put it, like eloquent or just satisfying. It was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah. Also, like, what does Koenma do?
Well, like, he sends people to the underworld, or he sends them to heaven or hell. That's what we find him. He's supposed to keep the balance between good and bad.
Okay.
So, like, he's supposed to keep, like, because when we first see him, he's sending scrolls of people's lives. He's basically God, right? He's deciding who goes to heaven, who goes to hell. or St. Peter. Let's put it that way. And so that's his function, but his function is also to make sure that yokai aren't returning to the human world. That's where Yusuke's character would normally like, hey, you're my guy. I can't go down on the ground and fight, but you can. I can send you down there to kind of keep the peace. So I guess that's his job, kind of. He's kind of the keeper of the humans.
I guess. It just feels like a very worthless character.
Yeah, he didn't do much. I mean, I would imagine if, again, they had more time, they had more episodes, we would see more from him and, like, his utility.
I guess.
But I think it's really more about Yusuke's, journey. Yeah, journey is the exact word I was looking for. I do think they left a lot on the table, character-wise, and, story-wise, with it being so short. Like, it was satisfying because there was so much packed into every episode. And there were no filler episodes. There was no chance to take a breath. It's very on rails. But at the same time, it feels like, we never say this, by the way. I don't think we've ever said this on the podcast. It feels like it needs an extra episode. Normally we're like, this should have ended 5 episodes ago.
I guess, but like, I feel like they should have just cut out stuff. Like Togoro's backstory and like the whole meeting with the mentor again. Like that all could have been cut out, and that time would have been used for something more. What's the word I'm looking for? Relevant.
Relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if I were looking at the story, like what I was missing was, and I wish they would have spent more time on, was some of the relationships, the inter-team relationships of our, adversaries turned allies. The idea that Hiei and Kazuma can be at each other's throats a little more because they don't like each other. Oh, you're a yokai, you're a human, you suck, I suck, back and forth, and like making them have to have that begrudging respect. That's kind of why in anime they go off and do adventures. They go to villages and they solve things, because then the problems that they're solving are an avatar of the problems of the personal relationships of the characters, and they work through them. And when they solve they save the small village, then they get to repair a piece of their relationship, and we get to see them come together. And we didn't have much time for I'm not saying I wanted a bunch of one-off cases, but I kind of did want a little bit more of that. I kind of wanted kind of the one-off case that like brought the team together. It was just a side quest almost. But because it's 5 episodes, they just don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And we don't get to see those characters really grow together. And so a lot of it, you kind of go, oh yeah, no, I get it. But they're not really servicing it, but I get it and I enjoy it. But overall, pretty fun ride.
Yeah. I did enjoy it. There are just things that I'm just like, I could live without. And yeah. I also just think that the character Sakyo is like so blah.
Yeah, he's kind of a big who cares.
Yeah. And so that big bad doesn't feel like I mean, obviously Toguro plays the character of the big bad because Sakyo is so like throwaway bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to this like all-powerful, we've talked about it before, you're like, these bad guys who sit in a room and they're waiting for their giant sky beam to finish sky beaming so that the aliens can come into the world. Like, it's a very popular trope for bad guys to be like, I have the powerful weapon and I only need 7 days to finish it. It's like, well, I guess in 7 days we're going to have a showdown, and then the last episode will be like, will he finish his mega weapon or not? Like, it's very inactive. And again, that's why I find the idea that, like, what is the bad guy's problem in the 5 episodes of television that we watch? Really, what it boils down to is his problem is he needs more money. And that's kind of lame.
Yeah. Anyway, my rating is in the buffet line. It was mostly enjoyable, but there were some things that I'm just kind of like, whatever. I mean, it's kind of an annoyance to have to wait in line, but it's not bad enough to like make me not want food anymore. So, yeah.
Pretty fair assessment. I think I'm the same in the buffet line. It's the upper end, I think, of in the buffet line, because I absolutely would watch a season 2 of this.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I thought they did the anime thing really well. I feel like I've seen it done poorly so much, and it was really nice to see it kind of be satisfying. So there definitely were problems, but I think the power of this show is the lead characters and their relationships and their growth, and just a lot of fun. A lot of fun in the buffet line.
Yeah.
So our recommendation this week is another live action anime adaptation available on Netflix, and that is One Piece, the live action version of One Piece, not the 10,000 episodes of anime.
Well, I guess apparently Netflix is going to remake.
Yeah, the One Piece.
The One Piece.
Which is a condensed version, which is an animated condensed version of the original animated series.
Yeah.
So if watching 10,000 episodes of the original is too much, they're going to boil it down and remaster and reanimate everything, and people have seemed very excited. But the live action is available right now. We did watch that. We will be doing a full podcast episode on that. But just very shortly, it was worth the watch. I was pleasantly surprised. And again, we have not watched the anime, so we're not coming at it from massive One Piece fans. We got to kind of experience some reveals that I think we wouldn't have been able to experience if we'd seen the anime about, characters being involved with each other. But it's definitely worth a watch. I think the cast was fantastic. It really, again, kind of like this one, was a fun ride. So if you have Netflix, check that out, and then you can be on the lookout for the One Piece whenever they decide to release that. And then you can be on the lookout for the DramaMeans episode where we talk about the live action One Piece.
Yep. And that is it for us today. We will see you next week. Thanks for listening.